In 2014, a man named Ethan and his wife Dani spent a weekend on Vancouver Island, something they'd done many times before. The couple were experienced campers who loved the island for its mix of scenic beaches and dense forests. Every trip had gone smoothly, until their last one, when something terrifying happened. They had set up camp far from any roads or towns, enjoying the isolation. Their tent sat on a quiet beach, a good distance from civilization. With a campfire burning through the evening, to reach the road, they'd have to walk nearly a kilometer along the beach and then another 2 through thick forest. Earlier that day, they met a traveler from New Zealand named Leon, who was camping in his van parked up on the road. Ethan and Dani invited him down to join them for a campfire. The three shared wine and conversation as the sun began to set. That's when things got strange. As dusk settled, they began hearing what sounded like women's voices coming from the woods behind them, the area that separated the forest from the beach. It wasn't completely dark yet, so they assumed it might just be other hikers, campers, or perhaps voices echoing from a boat offshore. Still, the sounds were clear enough that all three agreed they were hearing women talking. As night fell, Leon decided to hike back to his van before it got too dark. Ethan and Dani stayed at their campsite, but Dani was becoming increasingly uneasy. The voices hadn't stopped. It still sounded like two women talking, but they couldn't make out any actual words. The sound seemed to come just beyond the tree line. They stayed up late tending the fire, scanning the cove with a flashlight every so often, searching for a boat or anything that could explain the voices. There was nothing. Finally, around 3 a.m., the forest went silent. They put out the fire and crawled into their tent. About 15 minutes later, footsteps echoed near the campfire. The steps came from behind them, deep in the woods where it wasn't possible to walk easily. They froze, hoping it was just a black bear, which were common and usually timid. The footsteps moved around the campfire, circled the tent, then faded back into the forest. 5 minutes later, the footsteps returned. This time, the voices came back too. Two women speaking in a bizarre, unintelligible gibberish. They were talking over each other, loudly, almost shouting, like they were arguing or chanting. Ethan and Dani lay completely still, terrified. The voices moved closer until they were right outside the tent, still talking rapidly and nonsensically. Then, without warning, everything went silent. No footsteps, no voices, just the sound of the waves. Ethan and Dani stayed frozen until sunrise. When they finally woke up around 11 a.m., they packed up and left immediately. They never went back to that island again. The next story takes place in Utah. Hikers Kylie Cashwell and John Stone from Eagle Mountain spent years exploring local forests looking for interesting sights. During one of Kylie's solo hikes near Cedar Fort, just 5 miles south of Salt Lake City, she stumbled across piles of animal bones, trash, and strange symbols made from sticks and rocks. Some appeared to be arranged intentionally, forming eerie shapes and circles. A few days later, on September 15th, Kylie brought her friend Josh to show him the area. This time, what they found was far worse. Near the trail, they discovered a severed deer head inside a pentagram surrounded by deer legs. Kylie swore it hadn't been there before. The sun was going down, so they took some photos and decided to head back. But soon realized they didn't recognize the trail anymore. It grew dark fast. Their phone flashlights were the only light they had. As they tried to find their way back, they began to feel like someone, or something, was following them. Then they heard branches snapping and bushes rustling about 20 feet to their right, even though the air was completely still. Panic set in. They picked up their pace and followed what looked like a main path, hoping it led back to the car. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the forest. Low, guttural, and inhuman. Kylie ran without looking back, but Josh did. He later claimed he saw a massive black figure on the trail behind them, too large to be human. Somehow, they made it back to the car and sped away. Later, Kylie researched the area and found multiple reports of cult activity, animal sacrifices, and several unsolved disappearances in those same woods. Neither of them ever returned. Far from Utah, deep in the forests of northern Germany, two friends were hiking through what used to be East German territory when they stumbled upon something unusual. metal pipes sticking up from the ground like periscopes. Curious, they pushed through the bushes and uncovered a hidden wooden hatch leading to an underground doorway. What they found beneath it was chilling. A vast, abandoned military bunker stretching into several tunnels. It was a dark, decaying reminder of a secret part of history long buried under the forest floor. The long central corridor stretched deep into the underground structure, with smaller tunnels branching off in every direction. Exploring the place felt like wandering through a maze. The two friends made sure to stay close together. They were afraid that if they split up, they might never find each other again. That's how massive and confusing the bunker was. As they ventured deeper, they found German words scrawled on the walls. One message translated to, "Help." Ignoring their growing unease, curiosity drove them further inside. The deeper they went, the worse the air smelled and the more decayed the rooms became. Another message appeared on the wall, this one reading, "Hello Satan, I love you." Some of the corridors were flooded with foul sewage like water. In one large room, they found a strange machine sitting in the center, half buried in grime. A single shoe was stuck in the sludge beside it, as if someone had fled in a hurry and never returned to grab it. It's believed the site was once a World War II-era military bunker, possibly used by Nazi soldiers as shelter. Why the soldiers left so suddenly, and who wrote those chilling messages, remains a mystery. In the final story, for privacy, we'll call the man Bill. Bill was an experienced hiker. In 2016, he was visiting his brother in upstate New York, near Downsville. His brother owned a small house and a barn in a rural area surrounded by forest. During one of his hikes in late fall, when most of the leaves had already fallen, Bill was walking a narrow trail that connected a few remote properties. That's when he spotted something unusual, a duffel bag lying on the ground. It looked surprisingly new, not like it had been out in the elements for long. But an awful, rotting smell came from it. Bill feared the worst, maybe an injured animal or worse, a human body. He hesitated but knew he had to check. Just as he reached for the zipper, he heard footsteps coming from the trees and a voice shouting, "That's mine! Don't touch it!" A large man wearing a dirty jacket and jeans stepped out from the woods, grabbed the bag and stared at Bill. Startled, Bill told him he thought the bag had been forgotten. The man replied that it contained his kill from a hunting trip, but Bill wasn't convinced. Hunters use coolers to store fresh kills, not duffel bags, and the stench was far too strong to be fresh. He quickly apologized and walked away, trying to act calm. He could feel the man's eyes on him as he left. Moments later, he heard the bag drop onto the ground again. But when he turned around, the man was gone. Now on edge, Bill pulled out his phone to call his brother, but there was no service. The only thing to do was keep walking and hope the man didn't follow. But soon, he heard the sound of leaves crunching behind him. Slow, deliberate footsteps keeping pace. Every time he looked back, he saw nothing. Then, at one point, he caught sight of the man again, partially hidden behind a tree, watching him. That's when Bill broke into a sprint, crashing through the trail as fast as he could. He came upon an old, abandoned house surrounded by overgrown grass. Exhausted, he forced open the back door and slipped inside. In one of the bedrooms, he hid under an old cot. Minutes later, the door slammed open. Heavy footsteps pounded through the house. The man was inside. Bill could hear his ragged breathing as he searched each room. When the man entered the bedroom, Bill held his breath. The man paused, then turned and left. Moments later, Bill heard the door slam shut again. He stayed hidden for another 30 minutes, too afraid to move. When he finally came out, the sun was beginning to set. He ran down the dirt driveway leading from the house to the main road. There, he managed to flag down a passing car that drove him straight back to his brother's house. Bill called the police and told them everything. Officers went out to investigate, gathering his description of the man and the location. They never confirmed what was inside the duffel bag, but the smell and the man's behavior suggested something horrific. Whatever it was, Bill had stumbled onto something the man didn't want anyone to see, something that might explain why he was so desperate to silence a witness.